To get started, I wanted to do some quick introductions about who we are. My name is Jim Kidwell. I'm here in Portland, Oregon, in the United States, and I work for Dante. I am the principal product marketing manager here, and I handle most of the software products that we sell as a marketing manager. And I'd like to introduce my co-host here, Lawrence Crew. Lawrence, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Jim. How you doing? Yeah, hi. I'm actually in Sydney, Australia, and it's ridiculously late. But we wanted to make sure we could reach people across the northern hemisphere. So I'm the product manager for Dante Director, and Dante Domain Manager, and Dante Controller.
All right. Thank you, Lawrence. And once again, thank you for staying up late for us and for everybody here on the call to get to enjoy Lawrence's presence. Okay. So to get started, I want to launch a poll here. So you should see it pop up on your screen. So our question to get this whole started is, does your AV network have access to the internet? So now there are multiple choices here, and you may or may not choose one or the other. We see a lot of people out there going towards what we were calling a converged network. And a converged network is basically where you have all of your internet traffic, including all of your email and all of your meetings and everything like that, and your AV network, all on the same network. Some people are doing that. I would have to say that a lot of people have broken their networks into two, which obviously a lot of the switch manufacturers love that because they could get to sell you two switches rather than one. So if you have a switch that is just for, or a whole network that's just for your AV network, then that's great. But does that secondary network have access to the internet? So there are multiple reasons why you would want to or not want to. Usually, if you're wanting to use a SaaS service like Dante Director, you will need to have access to the internet. And we see that a lot of that is becoming more common when you have more modern conference rooms and things like that. If you're in an office space, you can see how that is beneficial because you need to run teams and things like that. So our poll seems to be starting to even out a little bit. A couple of people are still responding. I'm going to cut it off here in just a second. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and we will be able to share the results. So with our results here, we see that this is not surprising. Very few people are actually on a converged network now. We understand that that's a more modern approach, and a lot of older networks could not support that high level of traffic that is required to converge and put audio and video onto your same network that you're using all of your users downloading items and watching videos and things like that. All of our AV over IP networks have internet access. That's just 10%. That's a little bit lower than what we've had in the past. Sometimes some people say that this is just a standard now that they go ahead and add it. Some is about 23%, and then no, but we'd add if we found the right need. That's encouraging too, because a lot of services now are going towards a SaaS-based service where you don't have to maintain a server and it's all running in the cloud. So you have more options when you do that. And then 30% are at the air-gapped or standalone networks only. That's not surprising because that's been the way that most people have approached it for a long time. But this does give us kind of a lay of the land. Does this basically what you expected, Lawrence?
Yeah, that's pretty consistent with what we've seen before, I think. And obviously, there are reasons why people want to keep things very separate and very isolated. And I guess in some respects, if something is unchangeable, then it's more likely to continue operating the way that it has been. But there's a trade-off there between, as we move into approaches where you want observability and remote access to things, then obviously you have to make that decision.
Yeah, very, 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 very true. And some, obviously there are some networks that are always going to be air gapped and never have access to the internet, such as highly secure facilities, such as military installations and things like that. They'll never be connected to the internet. So totally understandable. But I would expect kind of the kind of graph we have of going larger as you go down, it'll be kind of switched a little bit, and we'll just have a fewer and fewer that will be in the air gapped. All
Yeah,
right.
it's definitely a changing trend. Just a note, Jim. Ryan in the questions has said that the chat seems to be disabled.
Oh,
Not sure if that's a problem or not. I guess if people want to let us to ask a question, let us know. They could just use the Q&A function
yes.
rather than the chat.
Apologies. Yep. It sounds like the Q&A is the way to go. All right. So please use the Q&A to submit questions. Thank you for noting that, Lawrence. All right. Moving forward, Lawrence, take it away.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to start with some fundamental concepts here around the different ways to manage Dante networks. For those of you who have been using Dante for a while, or I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with Dante. If you just get a bunch of devices connected to a switch and run Dante controller and start patching, then you're generally speaking running in an unmanaged environment. And so just not to confuse this with managed or unmanaged switches. This is just in terms of how the actual Dante control and management and monitoring is working. So the diagram on the left represents this. Dante has been conceived, and initially was conceived mainly for the live event and live production use cases, and it was always designed to be very, very robust and very simple to get up and running with. And it's a very device orientated protocol when it's in unmanaged mode. What's nice about it is you can bring along Dante controller or some other controller, and you can tell the devices what they want to, how they route to each other, and then you can take that controller away, and the devices will keep just doing their thing because all of the state, all the configuration is stored exclusively in those devices. You can actually have multiple controllers, and you just make changes as you go. For many environments, and particularly when you've got environments where the people who are using the system are experts, so you've got audio video people on site, on staff operating the system, then it's a perfect model in that case. When you look at more kind of long-term installations where you've got tiers of users who are non-expert users, and they just want to kind of press the button on the wall, where you have a team who is potentially looking after multiple parts of installation or multiple installations in different places. Then the need for having control over who can change what, having traceability of what has changed in the network starts to become a bit more important, and being able to make sure that there's a simplified view for the non-expert users as well as the more advanced view for the expert users of that system. So in the managed Dante world, and when we say managed, we mean either Dante Domain Manager or a Dante Director at this stage. We introduced this manager, which is either the server or the SAS host, which is through which all of the control, monitoring and management is routed. So there's a singular manager that all of the control and monitoring and management is then authenticated. It's user access controlled, and it's centralized through that manager. Now, Dante in managed mode still retains that characteristic that if the manager is taken away for any reason, then the media will still route. The devices still know what they're meant to be listening to or watching. But all the changes that you might make into a network have to be routed through that manager. So that's the essential difference. But what this means is it's more secure, it's more traceable and more observable. And you have a single point of coordination. So, for example, we've got an API in the managed world because you have that one point of aggregation and coordination through which you can feed and API commands back and forth, and you know how they're going to land in those devices. So that's the kind of essential difference there. So generally, we're seeing the managed approach being much more appropriate for those long-term permanent installations where you have a team managing those over the period of years. So conference rooms, hotels, retail environments, or those sorts of environments. And we're still seeing quite a lot of popularity of the unmanaged, where you have a more ad hoc type of environment, live events, touring, where things are getting torn apart, put back together on a regular basis, and you've got those experts operating the system. Yeah. So anything to add to that, Jim? That was probably a bit of a longer explanation.
I think that's totally straightforward. I think, yeah, Unmanaged is just the way that things come out of the box with Dante. Managed is an additive, a layer of software on top of that to help manage and control. So that's a great distinction. All right, moving on to the next slide.
Yeah, so most of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with Dante Controller. So Dante Controller is used in both the managed and unmanaged scenarios. In the unmanaged scenario, it connects directly to the devices over the local network. So using MDNS or multicast discovery, just finds all the devices, reads the state, and then can write configuration back to them. Using Dante Domain Manager on the right-hand side is a fairly mature product. It's been in the market for about 5 years, and it's used in many of the really large and more complex installations that use Dante. So that's a server product that you run on your own hardware, or you can run it in your own AWS tenancy. And we see installations with thousands of devices running in Dante Domain Manager, where you really need to break that down into smaller chunks, to enable more advanced clocking scenarios and routing between subnets, and that kind of event logging and access control. And then Dante Director is relatively new. We launched it just at InfoComm last year, so it's been a little bit less than a year in the market. And you can simplistically you can think of it as a kind of SaaS version of Dante Domain Manager, and it shares a lot of the same code at the heart of it. But it's a bit more simple and convenient to get up and running. And we've targeted that towards a wider set of use cases. It's a little bit lower cost of entry. Yeah, pretty quick to get started with. The other advantage being SaaS is that it gives you remote management. So you can either, maybe you're a service provider, you've got a bunch of different customers, you can just flick between those customer installations without having to drive out there. And you can manage those, and you can view them in Dante Controller. Or maybe you're running a AV for a corporation, and you've got offices around the world, and you want to have those visible in one spot. So Dante Director has the advantage of having that centralized remote management as well. So we are focused on Director today, obviously. So and not to discount, DDM certainly has its place as well, and some people definitely prefer that on-premise approach. And unmanaged has its place as well. But since we're talking about Director, we'll go a little bit into the benefits. So yeah, I mentioned remote management, user access control as well, a bit like DDM. So if you want to make sure that only people who have the authority can change things and view things. Let's imagine you're in a retail or a university environment, you really don't want people just being able to kind of randomly plug into a network port and start mucking around with your settings. Even if you have people who are authorized, sometimes something changes or something goes wrong, and you want to know what happened so you can go back and assess the situation. So you've got logging of the events that occur in Dante Director. We've got some telemetry features, which Jim will show, and control extensions. Not only can you launch and operate Dante Controller from anywhere, but also we have the Managed API, so that you can connect third-party systems or write your own control systems.
All right, so I wanted to go in and talk a little bit about security and SAS services. So Evo asked a question, actually, which is a reminder. If you'd like to ask questions at any point in time, please do so. We will do our best to answer them during the course of the call, maybe not immediately, but as much as we can. But Evo asked, do we need devices connected to Ethernet to use Dante Domain Manager? The answer to that is no. You don't need to use Dante Domain Manager online. You don't need access to the internet to do that. It does need to be connected to a local Ethernet cable that's connected to a network to actually make that work. So if you meant internet instead of Ethernet, you don't need the internet, you just need Ethernet. All right.
Since we're answering questions, and Danny did ask about VR. And the good news is, yes, there is a new version of VR coming out. I can't give you an exact date, but it's pretty close. It'll be in the next month or two, I think. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And yeah, we've been steadily working on VR, and we'll be excited to finally have an update. It's been quite a long time coming for Dante VR, but we know that's quite popular, and we've had a fair bit of feedback about that. So I look forward to it.
Yeah. So yeah, again, please feel free to submit questions whenever you want. So what we're talking about here is security and SAS services for AV. So we answer at the outset, we ask the question, does your AV network have access to the internet? It is required for Dante Director to actually have access to the internet because our services run on cloud services, and you need to be able to have your devices see that cloud service. We need to be able to enroll them into Dante Director, just like you would enroll devices into Dante Domain Manager if you've ever used that. So it's the same kind of process. Um, so air-gapped and standalone networks are not really supported in this instance. So you need to open them up. To open them up safely, you do need to be able to open specific ports in your firewall. So now, if you're managing your own network, you probably know how to do this already. If you aren't, managing your own network and you need support from an IT manager or things like that, this white paper is a very good resource to be able to hand off to your IT manager to say, hey, look at this. There are some specific ports that we need to have open so our devices can actually see the internet. This is a very specific white paper. It talks specifically about your Dante networks. So it is just contained to this. You could even have everything else closed off on that network and that has no other access to the internet, but just specific ports that are required for this. You can even safely restrict traffic to our Dante Director server. So anything that's on that network can't access anything but what's on the Dante Director server. So you can make it as restrictive as you want. Granted, that would prevent anybody else from just plugging things into that network and using it for anything else. So there are benefits and drawbacks of each approach. But if you want to be very, very restrictive, you can do that, and this will tell you how to do that. Anything to add to this, Lawrence?
Yeah, and look, from a device perspective, there was actually only one port, UDP 8000. Now, I don't suggest you try and remember this because it's all in the book, but yeah, there's only one port you need to open for devices to talk to Dante Director. There are a couple of other ports that Dante Controller uses to talk to Dante Director, but we're actually working on simplifying that as well. But if you want to have just your Dante devices on a network that has a very limited access to the internet, then yeah, you can get away with just that one single port, and there's no need to have general traffic able to traverse that network.
Okay, and as Lawrence has mentioned a couple of times in the presentation so far, when you're using Dante Domain Manager or Dante Director, you get access to the Dante Managed API. Again, this is because it's a central resource that collects all information from all devices, and it knows where everything is. You can send calls to that API to either Dante Domain Manager or Dante Director with an API key. I'll show you how to do that within Dante Director. And then that allows you to build custom control interfaces, custom monitoring interfaces. So if you have other monitoring tools that are set up and you want to integrate Dante devices and anything from your Dante network into that other monitoring software, so you can have like a command center where everything is up on big screens, you can do that with this. A lot of times what we're seeing is people are utilizing this specifically for building simplified control surfaces. You may have seen Stream Decks out in the wild. They're very, very popular. They're an affordable way to get into building just complete easy control surfaces. And we have a BitFocus companion integration that works with Stream Decks that makes very, very easy custom control surfaces. So you can build buttons to do lots of different things very, very easily. There are also custom configurations built for Crestron and AMX connectors, as well as multiple monitoring services like Domots and AVI SPL, Symphony. Those monitoring services have built API integrations that allow you to do a lot more things with your network than you may can do currently. Any other thoughts you'd like to add, Lawrence?
Yeah, just a rule of thumb. So Dante Director is actually built on the API. So it's a GraphQL API. So anything that you'd see or can do in Dante Director in general, you can access via the API as well. And yeah, we use what's called introspection. So you can point an API tool at the server and you can just see all of the schema. for that API. So it's pretty flexible, and we've seen some people doing some pretty interesting things. But basically, any of the sort of Dante functionality at the moment. So being able to check the status of anything, being able to read and write the channel routing, device names, channel names, all of that sort of stuff is supported by the API. So it's quite flexible.
All right. Now we've been
Quite a few
talking
questions here. Did you want to do the demo then come back to some questions, or we should try and knock some of these off while
about,
rather
while
than...
I'm getting set up, do you want to answer a question? And I'll get my system.
Sure. Yeah. So Ryan asks, is Director running on AWS? And the answer is actually, it happens to be yes at the moment. One's on AWS. We're running in a North American region. In the future, we might look at other regions, but yeah, but you don't really need to worry about that. Just as a SaaS service, you don't need to get exposed to the underlying environment. It's just kind of like sign up, click, and off you go. Ludberry, I think I might suggest that you contact Audinate support with the problem that you're having with primary and secondary ports. I'm not going to try and answer that one now, but please contact support. I'm sure they can help you with that. Martin asks about if they're already using DDM, what's the advantage of Dante Director? So yeah, so primarily the fact that it's in the cloud and you can access it from anywhere, or you can access multiple sites from anywhere. I would say that some of our customers who are using DDM are wanting to move away from hosting servers because of the way that their IT policy is going, and they're going through some sort of SaaS transformation. So it would be one reason to move to Director. But if you're already using DDM, then you probably would be okay to stick with that for the time being. Eventually, we'll merge the two products in some way, but there will always be an on-prem and then the SaaS version of it. Wireless Dante audio and video is actually, it's a little bit harder than what it seems. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but unfortunately, the short answer, Brent, is who was asked when we see wireless Dante audio and video is probably not anytime soon, because Dante relies on very deterministic clocking and timing, which is very hard to do over Wi-Fi because of the way that the traffic bursts. But anyway, it's a little off topic, so I'll move on from that.
Okay, why don't we go through the demo and then we can hit some more questions.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So going into Dante Director, it's as Lawrence mentioned, it is running on AWS and on a server here. Basically, all you need to do is enter director.dante.cloud, and when you log in, you get access to all of your different sites. Now, this can be anywhere in the world. Right now, the servers that I'm looking at here are on the other side of the planet. Some of them are running in Cambridge in the UK, and some of them are, well, as you'll see right here, they're not running in France. We had a power outage there, and so this entire site is down. This is actually not a bad thing, because now you can see what happens when power goes out, and you can say, oh, wow, what's going on? So you can access multiple different sites. So I have multiple different accounts here running. I can switch over to another account here, and you'll see a whole bunch of other sites that are available here. These have all of the devices broken out. The main benefit that you'll see with using Dante Director and Dante Domain Manager is the ability to group devices in much more manageable ways. So you don't log into Dante Controller and see like 50 billion things and you're like, okay, where are these things all routed? Is it a confusing mess? It's actually a lot more easy to understand. Okay, these are the devices that are sitting in my auditorium. Even though everything might be connected to the same network, I don't have to worry about things getting routed in the wrong ways. Everything should be connected in the right areas. So
can I dig into that a little bit, Jim, just on
sure.
the nuance between accounts and sites?
Sure, go ahead.
So with the accounts, there's a couple of scenarios here. So in general, if you have one organization, let's say it's the university, you probably only want one director account, and the account really represents, it's like one subscription, really, one paid level of access to Dante Director. If I happen to be, let's say, a service provider and I've got multiple customers, then I can choose to have separate accounts for each of those customers, and they will get billed separately. If I'm a professional and I happen to contract with a bunch of different organizations, the way that this works is that as an individual, so as Jim in this case, I might do some work for the university, and the university can grant me access to their account. and maybe I've got my own clients as well, and I've set up Director for those clients. So it's quite flexible. I can have access to accounts that I pay for, and I can be invited to accounts that someone else pays for as well. But a single organization generally would have one account and then use the sites to break that down into either maybe there's different offices around the world or there's different parts of the installation that you want to have isolated from each other.
So,
Sorry
so
to
yeah,
jump in there, Jim.
yeah, totally great. That's a great context to give. Thank you for that. As you can see at the very high level here, once we go into an account, you can see that we have all our different sites, and you can see at a very easy, quick glance. Okay, there's something going on with these. Clearly, I've figured out already that the power is out. So if I come in here, you'll see that everything is all offline. Oh darn. Okay, so if I come back home here, you can see that these are all listed as red, and you can see that it says connectivity is an issue. This one down here is gray for a reason, because I come in here and all of my devices are not listed as high importance. They're all listed as low importance. This is something that you can do on a per device level. You can rank how things are considered within that status ranking. And if they're all ranked as low importance, it's not going to warn you about it. It doesn't really care. It's like, okay, who cares? You're not going to be warned about this. But for these, that's a big deal. You know, they're all marked in red. You want to come in and check out what's going on with these right away. So now, as you're digging in, I'll go into my auditorium here, and you can see that we're in an on the auditorium, everything is looking pretty good here. Everything's connected, the clocking set up properly. There are no subscription errors, and the latency is very good. You can dig into on a per device level. As I mentioned earlier, you can see how things are ranked here. I have my mixer set up as high importance. Like if anything's ever going wrong with that, I want to make sure that my mixer is good, because the mixer's what I prefer to have everything clocked to, and everything is really important. But I also have some wireless mics down here, and these wireless mics, if they go offline every once in a while, that's probably common. You know, that whole device gets moved around, and it's not necessarily always going to be plugged into the network. So I'm not too worried about that. Um, when I can even dig in further and see more detailed information about my mixer. So if I come in and look at my mixer, you can see a little bit more detailed information about this. You can set the ranking of how important this device is. You can even add some descriptions and so forth, and get a whole bunch of information in here. You can even push it as the preferred leader if you want within clocking synchronization. And some more, even more detailed settings, and see some recent activity in the event log with this device. Usually there's typically some subscription changes, and you can even, if the device supports it, you can even remotely reboot the device. So this is something, you know, like, hey, I'm sitting on my couch, something's going on with this. I know that the software on this product is working, but occasionally things go wild and I don't know what's going on. Maybe we need a firmware update that we haven't had a chance to do. You can reboot it remotely, and typically reboots, as you probably know, with computers and other things, they typically fix things. So we may not know what's going on, and even the software manufacturer may not know what's going on, to be honest. They'll just say, just reboot it. We've got a memory leak somewhere, who knows? So yeah, that typically is what works. So now within this, you can also go in and explore the transmit and receive channels and how things are looking within the actual product itself. As you'll see here, we have all of our different channels within this device all broken out. And you'll see that we have some tiny little latency charts here, which are very cool. So you can see, okay, at a very glance, like everything looks like it's actually working fairly well. And there's also a signal presence indicator. So this indicator right now, it doesn't look like there's anything playing through this, but if there were signals being sent through the actual channel itself, you would see this light up as green. Oh, looks like there's something going through this one right now. So typically when an audible signal that goes above the threshold, that's when that turns on. If you see something concerning, you can click into that latency chart and come up and see what's going on within the last hour. So you'll see where the latency is fluctuating with that actual device itself. You can look at the latency charts for the past 30 days. So if you're managing a site and somebody comes up and says, hey, on Tuesday, when I was in this one meeting at 10 o'clock, something happened with the audio. Everything cut out for just a minute or two. And I don't know what exactly happened. You can go back to that day and look at the charts and say, oh, looks like something happened. Okay, let's go back and we'll scroll back and say, oh, this is where that happened. It happened exactly on Sunday at 12:31 a.m. Something happened. And now this doesn't have to be something that happened with any of your Dante devices. This is just an indication that the devices are having problems communicating at that particular moment in time. That could be, in the instance of converged networks, that could be something where I've had production houses where they have converged networks and they'll have somebody pushing like an 8 GB file from one server to the other, and it takes over all of their bandwidth. Like all of the traffic in their entire network is dead because of that file transfer. So that can happen. It depends how your network is being managed. You may be able to prevent things like that, but those kinds of things can happen. So this is an instance of where you may want to investigate that. You may want to say, okay, it looks like this device over here is now failing. For whatever reason, it's reached its end of its life. Some of the parts are failing. We need to go fix it in some way, shape, or form, or service it, or replace it with a newer device and refresh it. So those are the kinds of things that you can diagnose with this. It's very handy. So one of the other great things about this too is that when you're looking at a specific device, you can say, hey, something's going on. I want to check more detailed features that I may not have available right here within Dante Director. I can click the Open Dante Controller button. Great thing about this is this automatically opens Dante Controller, automatically logs you in, because once you've enrolled devices in Dante Director, one of the benefits you're getting here is security. So you have to actually be authenticated into the network to be able to see it. So differences between an unmanaged and a managed network. In an unmanaged network, you actually have to, you plug into the switch. You can see all the devices on that network by plugging into that switch, and you can make any changes you want. If all of the devices that are plugged into that switch are enrolled in Dante Domain Manager or Dante Director, you will not see any of those devices unless you are authenticated to Dante Director or Dante Domain Manager. And what that does is you'll see that I'm logged in here with my email address. Please email me if you'd like. I'm happy to get emails. Please just don't spam me weird stuff. But you can log in, and then you can see all of the sites that you have access to. I am logged in right now to the auditorium. That's what I wanted to see because that's what I clicked in Dante Director. It automatically brought me over, logged me in, put me into the appropriate location that I was looking at. And now I can come in and say, oh, okay, here's my mixer. Here's my routes to DVS for all of my background music in my auditorium. And I can go through and I can make any types of other changes that I might need to want to make. So this is a great ability for you to even go in and say, hey, I want to check what's going on with this device. I can do any of the typical things that I might want to do in Dante Controller remotely. So that is a key point here too. Normally, to do anything with your devices, you always have to be plugged directly into the network to actually utilize Dante Controller. You're probably aware of this if you've used Dante for a long time. What Director does here is Director enables you to use Dante Controller remotely. It allows you to sit at home on your couch and go ahead and say, hey, I need to fix something over on my network. Log in using Dante Controller wherever you are. Like, perfect example is what I'm doing right here. This server does not sit in Portland, Oregon, where I am. This server sits in Cambridge in the UK. So I'm able to do whatever I need to do to that network over there on the other side of the planet using Dante Controller right now. So you'll see also that the signal presence here is popping on and off. So this is the signal presence indicator directly in Dante Controller, but it also exists in Dante Director now too.
Jim, might be just a good time to pause for 1 second and answer a question from a little while ago while you've got this open.
Absolutely.
So actually, someone anonymous asked for control, will this work the same with Dante AV? And if you look very closely, you'll see this thing called Uni Auditorium Mixer actually is not actually a mixer. It's all of these are just virtual AV devices actually, and that one's got a video channel. So you can see there, channel 1 there is a video channel, and the rest of those other 8 channels are audio channels. So the answer is yes. Control on Dante AV works exactly the same as it does on audio, and that's one of the lovely things about doing video through Dante. And that applies whether you're in Dante Controller or Dante Director or DDM. So all of the same working principles apply there.
All right, thank you. Yeah. So basically anything that you would need to do to your network using Dante controller, because your devices are enrolled in Dante Director, you can do it from anywhere. One thing I will also note about Dante Director is that it does have a responsive UI. So what does that mean? If you're wanting to bring this up on your phone, you can bring this up on your phone wherever you are. So if I'm out to dinner with my family, something's going wrong, or you get a phone call, you can just bring it up on your phone, say, "Oh, it looks okay," or remotely reboot that device if you need to, or give someone direction of where they need to go. Like typically for a lot of these situations, someone's saying, "Hey, something with wrong is going on with my system, the mics aren't working," you can just say, "Hey, go over and turn on the amplifier or replug that thing back in," which is usually what's happened. Somebody's turned something off they weren't supposed to, or unplugged something, and just plug it back in and you're probably good to go. So then you don't have to run all the way over to that location. So managing larger installations can become quite easy with Dante Director. So what this probably is a good time to bring up, like how many devices does it matter if you're using Dante Director? So it does not matter. You can use it for a very small network if you want to. The minimum size that you can purchase is 20 devices, and that's just where our basic accounts start. And then it can go up to thousands and thousands of devices if you want to have a very large network. So those can be added across multiple different regions. They don't have to be all on the same network at all. The benefits of Dante Director is you can say, "Hey, I have campuses all across the country, and all of these different buildings within each different campus has multiple different meeting rooms or lecture halls or whatever, and you can manage all of them from one single location." And then you can also give discrete access to people within your team. So if you have a larger team and people are managing different parts of that network, the cool thing is that you can do authentication and site users here too. So if I need to add another user, I can come in and I can say, "Okay, I'm going to add that person via email," and then I can give them restricted access to uh, uh, whatever sites they need to have access to. And then you can prevent them from inadvertently coming in and messing up something else. So in this instance here, say, for example, I'm working at a university. This university has a lot of student volunteers who come in and work in the auditorium, because part of our programs are to teach people how to use the AV systems within an auditorium so they can go out into the professional world and work in AV in those other professional instances. But do I want them messing with my classrooms? No. So I would give them access to the auditorium and the auditorium only, and then they can go and change all of the subscriptions and routings there. They can make everything work as the things would need to work for those programs. But all of the other classrooms who are still running on a Dante network, where I have all of my cameras in the lecture halls, and all of my amplification systems and all of that's going to be separated and in different sites, and they don't need to have access to that. Also, while I'm here and just kind of clicking through the various things, clocking can also be managed across your entire network as well. You can set up who is your particular first leader, um, and then you can manage and see, like, okay, my grand leader here is the wireless mic for some reason. That wasn't intentional. It's supposed to be the mixer. So if I want to, I can change this and say, okay, you know what? It's going to be my mixer, not my wireless mic. And then this will go ahead and renegotiate who my leader is. And you'll see everything change. And it's going to renegotiate what's going on my network, and you'll see everything come back to green here in just a second. So that's how quick things work within the Dante universe, and how you can easily manage things. And I did this from Portland. This is going on in Cambridge. We've also
I
got.
might point out while you're on the clocking page there, Jim,
Yeah, sure.
that one of the other features of Dante Director, which is the same as Dante Domain Manager, it actually allows you to route media across subnets. So if you have multiple subnets within one site, then and you can see here you've got settings for unicast clocking as well. So that will allow you to create basically a clocking bridge between different subnets, where normally that clocking traffic gets blocked at the subnet boundary. So a bit of an advantage there.
Yeah, you may have heard the term boundary clock. So that's exactly what this operates as. Dante Director and Dante Domain Manager as well will operate as a boundary clock and helping keep everything in sync and allow you to transmit things across subnets. All right, anything else to add before I pop on? Thanks for that context.
That's okay. No, I think we're good.
All right. So then we also have a very detailed event log. And if you have to dig into this, you are welcome to go into this. And we have multiple different pages of this, and it'll say exactly what's happening if things become out of sync, if the clock drifts too much or whatever, you'll get notifications, as well as any channel subscription changes and so forth. So again, this just allows you to have a better detailed analysis of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think this type of auditability is certainly something that people running corporate installations in particular. This is something that for all the systems that they're managing, they want to have this level of auditability, just so that they can have good practice and make sure that if things do go wrong, that they can do some sort of investigation there and make sure that doesn't happen again in the future.
Exactly, precisely. So moving on from this, I did want to talk a little bit about the API. So the API is utilized, as Lawrence indicated earlier, to build everything within this user interface. So if there's something that you see within the user interface, it's very likely that you can bring that into the any type of other application that you may be building or any type of other monitoring service. So now you don't have to be an API expert or a software engineer to be able to use this. You can use Postman, and there are some very simplified things that you can do. And I've even seen people use ChatGPT to get some of these things kind of working. So that is available. It will become a little bit easier for you to do those kinds of things as AI gets a little bit smarter. That being said, we do have some already built tools using Bitfocus Companion. So as I mentioned earlier, there's Bitfocus Companion and Stream Deck, that type of integration that you can build very easily. If you're not familiar with what Bitfocus Companion is a free tool that you can get from Bitfocus, and it allows you to install a client on your local machine and then plug in your Stream Deck or other type of surface that you may have, and then utilize that as a simplified user interface. So to do so, basically you create an instance. And if I wanted to add a connection, I'll just show you how to add a connection. If I search for Audinate, you'll see Audinate Dante, and then you just click add. And then that adds this here. And when that adds this here, it says, okay, you've got to give me some details about your connection. And in order to get this, you basically say, okay, I need to get some things. I need to get an API key. So I go to settings, give me an API key, and then all I need to do is just generate a new key. I think my button is being hid. Oh yeah, add account key. Sorry, that was hidden by my floating head. So I click add account key, and then I name it, and then I tell it what I'm giving it access to, and then I get a new key. I'm not going to do this because I've already got it up and running. Then after you have your key, you basically send all of the instructions to this API URL, and then use your key. So if you'll see in my, again, floating user interface, sorry. There we go. Okay. You see, you put your API host URL here, add your API key, and then say which domain you want to have this accessing. For this case, I'm going to be sending it to my auditorium. And then you click save. And once you've clicked save, it says, okay, I've got that now. Now, what do I want to do? I want to build some buttons. I've already pre-built some of my buttons here. This is my user interface that I have on my local Stream Deck. Since you can't see that, I don't have a camera pointing directly at it. I am going to show you what I've got here with some buttons. So these are the buttons that I've built, and these are the actions that they take. So with this button itself here, this is my Dante virtual sound card. So I'm in my auditorium. This is the music that's playing in between acts of what's going on stage. So I have it routed from a local computer where Dante virtual sound card's running, and then I have all of those channels routed. So when I push that button, it routes all of the channels to that computer. Then when things switch and go over to what else is going to be going on stage, what is the main production, I want to switch to the stage box, which has all of my channels there, all of the mics that are plugged in on stage that are miking the various instruments and performers and so forth. And then I want all of that routed directly there. I also built a clear button that says, okay, this is going to just take this channel and I'm going to clear it, because the way that Dante works, if you're not familiar, all of the Dante receivers are the ones that remember the information. So you know that you can go and power your entire Dante network, power it down, and then power it back up again, and it'll remember everything. What it's remembering is where it's expecting to receive transmissions from. So all of the receivers are remembering information. So if you clear the transmission channels from the receiver, that's when everything gets cleared away. So now if I'm looking at, you'll see I have here my mixer, my auditorium mixer. It's currently routed to the background music. And if I come over to my button here and I say, oh, okay, I want to go ahead. This is a virtualization of my buttons. And I click this button and I switch it to the stage box. You'll see that that sends the signal to move everything over to the stage box. And so that is happening here on this side of the world, and it's all the way over in Cambridge. So I can do it the other way too, and I want to go back to push my button to DVS, and it switches right back to DVS. So this is adding that simplified interaction that you may want to have for your users. That I could see this kind of thing being very, very useful in like lecture halls where you have a professor who comes in and always breaks things. Okay, I'm going to give you two buttons. One, it's going to turn on the lavalier mic. Two, it's going to bring everything from your laptop if you want to play a video, and that's all it is. Just boom, boom, and you could do something like that. Not to say that that's what it has to be, but there's basically anything you want to do to change up all your routings and so forth, you can do directly here using BitFocus Companion. So this is just a free example. It doesn't have to be built using BitFocus Companion. As I said, we do have integrations with Crestron and AMX and all of these other services out there that you also utilize the underpinnings of the API. Anything to add?
Jim, since we're on the API, there's a couple of questions here relating to it. So should we go through those now?
Yeah.
So yeah, James asked, is there an API integration with Extron? Unfortunately, no, not at this stage, but that's something we can look into. It's possibly something to do something simple. You may be able to develop it yourself. But yeah, we plan to try to do integrations with most major sorts of systems over time. So keep an eye out there. Detlef asked if there's a tutorial for BitFocus and Stream Deck. I think you've just kind of seen one. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea about what you can do. I don't know, Jim, we don't have a video for the BitFocus as tutorial.
Nope, I don't have a demo for that. But it is honestly just that easy. So what you
Pretty
just saw me
simple,
do,
yeah.
it's not very difficult to do. If I can do it, it's not hard.
So if you've got BitFocus, just get the latest version of BitFocus Companion and just go add and then search for Dante or Automate,
Yep.
and you should be able to kind of figure that out step by step.
Yep.
Hopefully, that's probably a good idea for us to do some kind of little video or tutorial on that. Stevens asked, what's the price for accessing the API? So the API itself it's not something we sell separately, or there's no cost to it on its own, but you do need to have your devices in Dante Director or DDM to use the API. So we'll get to pricing, I think, a bit later, but since you asked, Director starts from $20 US a month for 20 devices. So that's kind of like the base price for the API, I guess you could say. Yeah, I guess that's all the sort of API related questions. So although Anonymous asked, there are no stupid questions, Anonymous, but yes, Dante Director is something you need to pay for, and it's $20 US per month for 20 devices, and then $1 for additional devices for Director standard tier.
Okay. So that's probably a good point for us to go back, and we will talk about that. So this is the pricing. We just went over that. And if you want to do a little bit of comparison, these are just some basic comparisons, like the differences between Dante Director and Dante Domain Manager. Dante Domain Manager is a more mature product. It's been around for 5 years. It has a good suite of very solid features that are available within it. Dante Director is a newer service. So it may not have all of the features that Dante Domain Manager does, but we are working toward that. So there's not quite feature parity yet. If you want to know which product is right for your installation, if you want to move up to a managed world in your Dante network, we do have a page that is linked from both the Dante Director and the Dante Domain Manager page that compares the different features of each of the products. And primarily the difference is, can you have your network access the internet? So that may be enough to say, okay, you know what, I want to manage network, but I can't access the internet. So yeah, Dante Domain Manager would be the solution for you at this point. And so the very, very simple and pretty straightforward. Anything to add to that, Lawrence?
No, I think DDM is certainly, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, tends to be used on very large scale Dante installations. We're targeting Director really across the board, and it's applicable from very small scale. If you get benefit from remote management and some of these other features, then it certainly is viable to use it with those sub 20 device networks. But it also is quite scalable. So yeah, it certainly can be used on those larger instances as well. And we're seeing a lot of interest and uptake, especially from corporates managing meeting rooms across multiple sites around the world, are seeing a lot of benefit in Director because of that capability.
All right, let's since we're at the last little few minutes here, let's see what we can do. And actually, if we want to stay on a little bit longer, we might be able to do that. But just to be respectful of time, the questions that we have on here, can we do API buttons with Dante Domain Manager? The answer to that is yes. So you have access to the API with both Dante Domain Manager or Dante Director. So you can send API calls to either. It doesn't matter. So that is included there as well.
Yeah, look, Nathaniel asks a question. It's a little bit. It's a good question, a bit of a nuanced question here around it. It says, if you're using Director or DDM to set up and modify a network and then cancel it when no longer useful, will the setup be preserved? So the setup in terms of the routing between the devices and the basic device configuration is preserved. When you enroll, so it's called enrolling, when you get all your devices to go and talk to Dante Director or DDM, then generally speaking, in fact, in DDM, you can say to abandon all the settings, but you don't have to. But in Director, when you enroll the devices, it keeps all the settings in terms of the channel routing. And then if you unenroll them and put them back into unmanaged mode, then it keeps all of those settings as well. But what we would suggest is you probably wouldn't be moving between the managed and unmanaged environments that often. I would say by all means go and try Dante Director, or indeed you can get a trial of DDM, see if it meets your needs. You'll be planning probably to either be staying in Dante Director or not. Not something that you would want to set everything up and then kind of like just sort of like cancel and so I think by all means evaluate. If you want to move back to one managed, you can do that without losing all of your signal routing.
Here's one that's kind of related to the API again here. It says, do on-premise versions of Dante Domain Manager support the REST API? I believe that Dante Domain Manager, it's all Grafana, isn't it?
GraphQL, yeah.
GraphQL, sorry, yeah.
It's a GraphQL API. It's a little bit different to REST. It's a bit more of a kind of modern technology. It's still a web API. It takes maybe a little bit of time just to kind of get your head around some of the differences, but it's a lot more flexible once you get the hang of it. So I would say, yeah, look, have a bit of a look at it. There's plenty of tutorials around, and there's a user guide for the Managed API that tell you how to get started and give some examples there. But yeah, we don't support REST APIs.
So here's another question. Any way we could arrange the Dante matrix info, the transmissions and receivers to rearrange as required room names? So the naming within the actual product itself. So yes, you can rename devices and so forth. So if you want to name things within here, you can change the names.
Yeah, I just click on the name at the top there, Jim, and then it will.
Yeah, so you can change the name here, but this is just like what you would do within Dante Controller. So you can change names there if that's what you're referring to. Also within Dante Controller, the transmission and receive are within there, and you can also change names directly in Dante Controller if things are enrolled in Dante Director.
Yeah, actually, there's some. It's not a bit early to tell, but there's some new really nifty features coming in Dante Controller in an upcoming version that will make channel renaming a lot more smooth. So keep an eye out for that. That works whether you're in Dante Director or not. So
Yep.
and also you can actually, if you want to automate these things, and we have some of our large scale customers like to do this, you can use the API to actually automate the naming of channels and devices as well.
So we have a couple of questions. Oh my gosh, we have a couple of questions here directly about Active Directory and single sign-on. So Lawrence, do you want to take that with those?
Yeah, sure. Actually, SSO is we have a new version of Director coming out a little later in the year, but it's in beta at the moment, and we have onboarded our first customers into that beta with SSO. So we are using I think it's SAML based SSO. The first customers are using Okta, but we're planning to support a whole wide range of SSO clients. So yeah, if you're interested in SSO, please reach out to us, and we can talk about whether we want to get you involved in the beta for that. So we'd be happy to do that. There's another question here. Actually, it says, can you route between rooms or from one domain to another? And at the moment, in DDM, yes, you can. In Dante Director, right now you can't. But in this what we're calling Director Professional, which is due out later in the year, you will have an extra level of hierarchy. So you have site and then rooms, and you'll be able to selectively route the media between those rooms. So that's a feature that's coming.
Here's another question. Can we launch an update from Dante Director to a specific device? So if we're talking specifically maybe about firmware updates, that may be.
Shouldn't that means firmware updates? Yeah.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so this is a little bit complex, but in Dante Director, you will see a notification when there's a firmware update available, particularly if that update's available on Dante Updater. The actual updating needs to be done through Dante Updater, and you can, similar to how Jim launched Dante Controller, if there's an update, you'll get a little flag, and it'll allow you to launch Dante Updater, and then you can update from there. But unfortunately, it's not possible to update firmware remotely. You have to be in the network still, because the way that that firmware updating works at the moment is that the device actually talks to Dante Updater to get that file. It's something that we're working on. It's going to be a little bit of time, but in the coming years, you'll see that transition into a remote capable firmware update process. Right now, you can update devices that are in Director. You do need to use that Dante Updater and be on site to do that. Ador's got a question here about delay and latency when controlling video signals. Actually, there's a few different types of Dante AV, and yeah, actually, maybe we better take this one offline. But it works a little bit differently to audio. But that depends a little bit on whether you're using Dante AV Ultra, AVX, or AVA. They all work a little bit differently when it comes to latency. But as far as routing goes, they all work the same. You can route them the same as you can route audio, but they don't show a latency graph like you do with the audio. Yeah, Paul, you've asked the question, how does it work with DDM domains? So, and this is a question that does come up quite often. So you can't use Director with DDM. You have to choose one or the other. So any device has to have only one manager, and that can either be Director or DDM. A site in Dante Director is pretty much the same as a domain in Dante Domain Manager. So hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, you have to either pick one or the other there.
Here's Andy asked a question: if there is a networking issue or Dante Director is otherwise unavailable, is it possible to manage devices with Dante Controller?
The answer is no, actually. Now, I will say that that we are very careful to make sure that Dante Director is always up and available, and we do have a status page if you want to see, and it's up 99.99% of the time. But yeah, and by design, with Dante Director or DDM for that matter, because of the way that that control is secured and authenticated, that you do need to have the manager there. You can't just see things in Dante Controller. So that is one of the limitations, or one of the factors you have to keep in mind.
So now, one thing to remember is that even if you lose connectivity to Dante Director, you will not have an interruption in your signals at all.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So
The
your
media will still
devices
continue to
will
flow.
still communicate with each other. You don't need to worry about that. It's not if something goes offline with Dante Director for whatever reason, which as you can see here, this is our status page. There's no worry at all to your local network. This is purely a management tool, and the signals themselves are still flowing directly between your devices, and they're not flowing up to the network.
Yeah. Yes, but it is true that if Director was offline, then you can't change things, but things will continue to work.
True. And you can see that there's also various different parts and pieces that that are affected. So even if one small part, like looks like there was a very tiny issue here for 2 minutes, that with device management, but that did not affect the API, did not affect the web portal, and didn't affect Dante controller use remotely either. So it was just a small error that was fixed within 2 minutes. So doubtful that you would even notice that at all. So most likely you were going to be up 99.99% of the time.
Someone here has made a comment or asked a question about said Director is limited to one node. Does a node mean a switch or a network of switches? So I'm not quite sure what exactly you mean by this. We use the term node usually as a sort of like another way to say a device, and the Director is certainly not limited to one device. In Director, you can actually connect devices from multiple different networks. For multiple subnets in one network, the switches, it doesn't really matter what switch they're on. Yeah, so there's no such limitations. I will say if devices are on different sites, then they can't route media to each other. But generally speaking, a site is going to be a completely separate installation. But yeah, there's no limitation on, say, the number of switches in your network. That just depends on what you want to do with your network.
All right. I think we've probably hit the end of our time here. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Lawrence, for joining us in the middle of the night. Much appreciated. Again, we will make this available as a recording, so you will be able to share this with any of your colleagues if you want to. Refer back to it for the BitFocus instructions about how to set everything up. Feel free to email me, jim.kidwell@audinate.com, if you have any questions. I'm happy to route you to the appropriate person. And once again, thank you so much for your time. And we hope you learned something today. And please go do a free 30-day trial of Dante Director. Hopefully it works for your needs. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.